has already been indicated. My name is Lwazi, human rights lawyer. The subject that I'm going to speak about is quite an easy subject to talk about, but very difficult to deal with. It's an issue of land, spatial justice, as well as housing. I think there's a very strong shared history amongst Africans of dispossession, land dispossession. But I think sometimes we like to confine that dispossession only to land, but it's actually a property dispossession. Because if you think historically, you don't only lose land. Where do we keep our cows? Where do we grow our crops? It means you lost that as well. So there's a historical as well as a current context. So, I mean, in 2019, we talk about the power of space. Where we are today, there's nothing that represents better than the space that we are in today, what dispossession means in this country. As some of you might have heard, this is called the Old Fort, and ultimately it was a jail. An old fort was a military fort that was built by Paul Kruger himself, one of the architectures of dispossession, violent dispossession, as well as apartheid government. So it was built on the basis of maintaining white privilege as well as power, and power revolves around property. And in the current context, it has the constitutional court that is supposed to actually advance our constitutional rights, particularly around land and housing, specifically land reform. So what I'm going to try briefly to do is to delineate and try and dissect and critique as well what the challenges are, and perhaps some of the things that we could do better in terms of land reform and sharing of space. Firstly, what we now understand is that when we talk about land and housing, we're not talking about brick and mortar, just a roof on top of your head. It's an issue of economics. And I think white people understood it very well. That's why they protected all sorts of violence. And I think we understand it very, very well, even currently. The richest people in the world, what do they have? The first thing they buy is property. That's what we invest in, is property. But the rest of us who are poor have to buy ourselves into that space, isn't it? We talked about privilege earlier on. Even the black privileged people have to qualify, they have to buy themselves into that space. We celebrate and slaughter, you've bought a house, you've now qualified into property. It doesn't happen by default that you actually get a house or you get space. It's a fight. But this is what this is what is happening in South Africa. What you have in South Africa, you have very nice policies, democracies, policies and so forth, that speak the language of land reform and so forth. But what you have is actually lack of the will and enforcement of property rights that will benefit everyone else. Spatial planning laws are all there, they're all beautiful, but it's lack of implementation that is lacking. There are multiple reasons for that. One, people who have property power and business as well are one of the same thing these days. Are people who are keeping property for themselves, firstly, and secondly, with some of the debates that are not coming from the right angles. I'll deal shortly with the expropriation without compensation debate, which I think is always the elephant in the room when you're talking about property rights in South Africa. Firstly, my view is that expropriation without compensation is not going to solve the broader land reform question. Land reform is a much bigger problem. It's a much bigger issue than just expropriation without compensation. The problems do not lie with policy, as I've said, lie with the executive as well as the administrative power. So you can amend the constitution as much as you want, but for as long as we don't implement policies as well as the legislations, it is not going to happen. It doesn't matter what you do. I'll speak of some of the cases that I've done before, constitutional cases that I've won, beautifully nice cases. But actually, what the judiciary can do is to say direct government, the executive, do this, 1, 2, 3, provide housing. But if the executive refuses to implement the court orders, what happens? They're basically ineffective. It's fine. This has not only led to spatial problems, but it has actually reduced our politics to politics of toilets. Nowhere in our history would you ever hear, even in the Freedom Charter, that would say after 1994 we want to fight for toilets. We thought it was a default position. This is because we're fighting for toilets because the kind of land tenure that you have also determines the kind of services that you get, the kind of health care services. If you live in an informal settlement, you are invisible. You're not going to get better schools, better healthcare facilities. So it's a broader socio-economic rights issue, not just an issue of housing. So when we talk about transformation, we like to talk about transformation as this in a vacuum. So you can't have a transformed society until you transform spatial justice, Nowhere do we even imagine currently in South Africa that actually a doctor, a plumber, and an engineer could actually live in the same community, not the one working for the other. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's by design. It is definitely by design. That's how spatial justice works. So where the irony is, with all these constitutional obligations that government has to do to land reform and so forth, where the irony is that government is actually one of the biggest evictors and displaces people all the time. Where they are invited to come in and execute constitutional obligations of providing housing on private land where people are evicted, what do? They come to argue to court how and why they can't execute those constitutional obligations. But what we need, firstly, is to understand that to disrupt property power, that's not an easy thing. We have to take bold decisions. We have to be very, very decisive. If we ever thought for once that disrupting property power is going to happen organically, it doesn't happen that way. You need to put the mechanisms, you take those decisions, those bold decisions. You have to demand certain things from society. And there's one thing that we misunderstand. When you talk about disrupting property power, you're not talking about distracting property power. There's a big difference. Disruptions mean you disrupt for the benefit of everyone else. And the rest of us are not benefiting from the current scheme of property power. The only thing that we have that actually proves that we belong in this country, we are part of the citizens, it's only an ID book, there's nothing else. And we all understand it's economics. It matters where you stay, it matters where you live, it matters so much that it's linked to your own employment. How you get to jobs, how you're even able to find a job. So in closing, the revolution has already started from the people's side, but what needs to revolt is the administrative as well as the executive powers of the state in terms of land reform.
Amen.